Hello friend, welcome back. In our previous video here we successfully created one of the view page for the role generator, and here also we added one of the script, that means the JavaScript, right? And with the JavaScript there is also one of the URL route, so that is one of the route I have created in your web route. So that is our route as a student registration get student. So from here I have to get all that is student, right? And then in our student role controller I have created one of the method as a get student method, and that is our get student. So that will be actually one of the get request. So also we have to get that as a request. So right now I name it as a request, and then the $request. Okay, that will be as a request and $request. So first of all I want to check it we have perfectly get this data or not. So I make it with the dd, and dd with this dd I want to check it as a okay done. So this type of one of the text should be visible. First of all I want to check it everything is working or not. So now if you now click as a save all, and now I want to open it, and then I refresh it. That means the role generator. Now go to that inspect and go to that network. So into the network area we can actually check it. Now like I select as one of the date as a 2000, and then I select as a class 1. Now click as a search. Yeah, you can see it's now perfectly getting it. That means the okay done, right? That means everything is working perfectly. Perfect. And now from here we have to get this data. So better I want to put some of the note for you. Okay, so that will be, you can actually check it in particular that area. And after that I want to get this data. So I want to get this which data. I want to get our student name, that actually in our user table, right? And there is a father name, the gender. So that is all the data actually will be comes from our user table, and role will be comes from our another table. So that means if you go to our database, so you can see the database into the assign student. So into the assign student, that is actually our role field, but every rest of this data will be comes from our user table. I think you already know about it, because of all I have already created that relation with our assign student table. So now go there. First of all I want to take one of the variable. I take one of the variable as all data. Okay, all data, and then with our assign students table, with this assign student table make that sure you load it. You can see I have already loaded this model as a assign student, right? So with this assign student, first of all I want to get all that are with data. That means I did this work in our student registration controller maybe. That actually all data. So here I take this type of work where that is I did this type of work, but I forget it where exactly I did it. You can see that is actually the same condition. Okay, so that will be one of the same condition. So that is our with our student, right? So we can actually also get some of the data from our user table, and from the user table I have also created this relation. Maybe if you go to our assign student, into the assign student, you can see I have already created that relation with our user table with this method as a student method, right? So right now we can actually use it. Right now we don't need this. So now with I name it as with, and here with our method name I have already assigned, that is our student, right? So that will be our student. So with this student I create that relation. Now we can actually access it. So that will be as with and where. Okay, where our one of the ID. That means here we need our two of this field data, that is our ID, year ID, and the class ID, right? So our year ID will be what? Our year ID will be whatever the data I pass it from here. That means this requested year ID, and also our class ID will be our this class ID, right? So that is all that our requested field data. So first of all I want to make it as our year ID. Okay, so that means here it will be as a year underscore ID. So make that sure your spelling is correct. So in our assign student table, into the assign student table, that is our year ID and the class ID, right? That is our year ID. So this year ID will be our requested year ID, as I told you. In our view page, into the view page I have also put that name as a year ID, right? So now that will be our requested year ID. So I name it as a request. Okay, request, and this request our field name. Okay, that will be the ID. I hope it's very much clear to you, friend. And also I take another one for the class, so I put another where condition. Our another where condition will be same, our class ID, class underscore ID. So this class ID will be, that means in our assign student table, this class ID will be our this requested class ID, right? So this requested class ID means if you go to our role generate, so that is our same name as this class ID. So I copy it, so that will be our this requested, same as a request, and with this request that will be our ID. Okay, so when it will be matched, then I want to get this data. Perfect. So friend, that's all you have to do. So you can also check it with the DD. Better I want to check it with the DD. So with DD, and then I get all the data with this variable. So now with this variable, I want to view it with the 2 array. Okay, I want to use it as a 2 array. Perfect. Now first of all I want to check it. Now click as a save all. I click the save all, and now go there. Now refresh it again, and now I check it with the inspect, and then go to that network. Under the network, I right now select one of the year. I select one of the class as a class 1 or class 2, and now if you click as a search, yes, you can see they have no error. It's perfectly getting some of the data. Yes, you can see I get this data with the array wise. So you can see perfectly getting this data. That is ID, and that is our all the students. So with this student also is get all the data from our user table. And also you can see there is another data. That means they have the 2 data. No, they have the 3 data actually, right? So there is a 2, and there is a 2, there is a 1 data, there is a 1, that is our 2 data, and then there is a 0, because array actually started from to the 0. That means they have the 3 data, right? Perfect. So friend, here we getting all that our data. You can see that is our year ID, everything we get. So now we have to pass it. So now I want to pass it. So better also put some of the note for you, so that will be as a noted. And after that I returned it, and I returned it with that JSON data, right? That will be one of the JSON format data. So I make it as a return response with the JSON. Okay, with the JSON, and then into the JSON area I want to pass all that our data. That means our all data variable, right? So here I simply pass it. I hope it's very much clear to you, friend. So now I pass it that response data, and now into the role generate I have already created this part. You can see from here I get all the data. So that is actually our success, all the data, right? So now with our var HTML, I take it and v our student. You can see with this student we have to actually get that ID. So that is our ID number, and that is a v student name. So now we get this name. You can see that is actually the name student. So with this student, now I want to access our this name. So our name will be as this one, right? So now perfect, it will be getting this data. And then with this student also I want to access that father name and the gender. And you can see there is also another one as a f name. That means the father name will be this one, and then the gender. If you go to the gender, that is actually joining religion, and you can see that is the gender, right? So also it will be getting this data with this student. So for the reasons here I name it with the v, and then v with this student, and that is our gender will be visible. Okay, and after that I take one of the input field type as a text, and then one of the class as a form class. That means a form control, and form control sm I take, and that will be our name. Okay, and that will be name our field name as a role. So that is our field name as a role. That means it will be getting our this role, all that our multiple data. So you can see there is a with this v I want to access our role field. Okay friends, so that's the things I did on here, and that will be loaded in our role generate tr. That means that is actually our role generate tr. So here it will be loaded in our t body area. Perfect. So friend, that's all I did on here. I hope every part is very much clear to you. So now let's check this out. If everything okay, it should be now work. Now click as a save all. I click as a save all. Now go there. So I have already checked it. We get all that our data. So right now this data should be loaded in our tr area. I close it. Now refresh it. So right now I select as a 2000 and I select class 1, and after that if you click as a search, yes, you can see friend, now what exactly happened. That means when you click as a search, if we get this data from our return response JSON, and into the return response JSON I put one of the condition, that is our dnone, right? That means the dnone will be as a remove class. So there you can see I use it as a remove class as a dnone. So when our dnone will be gone, then our this table will be loaded. Right now perfectly is visible our ID number, the student name, the father name, and the gender. You can see it's now perfectly getting that male, the female, the name, that means the father name, the student name, and also our student ID. Okay, that means the ID number. So that is actually our ID number. So I get that ID number, that is one of the input field as a multiple student, and then our student ID, right? So it's perfectly getting this data. So that is actually our ID number, student name, father name, gender, and the role. So if you want to add multiple field, you can add it. Only here you have to add another TD, and that will be actually the same format. So with this V you have to access it. Okay friend, I hope it's very much clear to you how can do that work. So now it's perfect. It's now perfectly getting our ID number and the student name. So if you want to change it as a class 2 data, click as a search. Yeah, it's perfectly getting our class 2 data. Okay, if you get this in the class 3, yeah, there is actually that into the 3 2000 there are the 2 ID student, the student name, father name, male, gender is visible. So right now I want to do from here I want to update this role. So right now you can see it's now showing as a null, because of all here I already make this field as a none. Okay, that means right now it's a null. So I want to do when you that is actually a Bella. So into the Bella area I want to put on the roll number as a 0 1 or 1. Okay, so after that if you click as a 1, and then if you click as a role generate, then that will be updated. Okay, so for the reasons here I have already take another things, that is our form, and that is our submit, right? So that is our value as a role generate. So right now I want to update this form. So into the form area I have also take one of the form. So that is actually one of the form, right? So into the form area we have to create that will be as one of the post method, right? So I want to post one of the role in our database table. So that will be as a post method, and also here we have to create one of the route for update this data. That means insert our role into our role table, right friend? So how can do that work better? I will continue this process in our next video. I will show you that things with a live example. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.